Hey, it's David, and welcome to the Shepherd Revolution podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the law of encouragement. You're going to receive practical, applicable, transformational value as an educator, as a parent, and as a leader, so you can start educating differently today. We are on episode number 6 of this series. Can you say it with me? Teaching to change lives. Oh my goodness, we're still going strong, and I'm so excited. In the last episode of Teaching to Change Lives, we uncovered the law of the heart by understanding that the law of the heart, it creates a deeper impact when it's heart to heart. And it does this through ethos, logos, and pathos. We talked about teaching is what we do and learning is what the students do. We also talked about taking the time to learn about our students and knowing our students and knowing their needs so we're able to meet them. Then we talked about being willing to be vulnerable in front of our students. One of the toughest things, right? Being transparent in front of them and showing them when we struggle, it's okay to struggle, but it's how we respond from it. And today we're going to dive in even deeper to understanding the law of encouragement. There's a quote that I love by Theodore Roosevelt. He says this: "Do what you can with what you have where you are." Do what you can with what you have where you are. It's so powerful. What would it look like if we express this same quote to our learners, to our spouses, to our children, and to our staff? What would that look like, and what would it create from them? It would actually communicate these concepts: ownership, curiosity, meeting needs, usefulness, challenge, recognition, and approval. The number one problem in education is that we fail to motivate our learners, right? We fail to get them off of the bench and get them in the game of learning. I believe that MQ, which is your motivation, is more important than IQ, which is intellect. And there are a lot of learners who have graduated and they're overly qualified, but they're utterly useless. And now, don't be offended by this. The reason why is not the fact that they lack the ability, is because they lack the application. They lack the motivation. The law of encouragement is this: teaching tends to be most effective when the learner is properly motivated. I'll say that again. Teaching tends to be most effective when the learner is properly motivated. That is the law of encouragement. Now, the word I want us to focus primarily is on properly, right? In that definition, it actually tells us there's an improper way to be motivated. Now, here are a few improper ways to be motivated, and a lot of people are motivated by this. So if that's you, do some reflection right now. Guilt, fear, deception, desperation. Again, the motivating factors that are improper are guilt, fear, deception, and desperation. Now that we have an understanding of the law of encouragement is the most effective when learners properly are motivated, let's transition to talk about the 2 levels of motivation, right? The first level of motivation is awareness of need. This is the intrinsic motivation. This is the motivation from without. And recently we just learned this in our school, where my wife was leading intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. And what the learners echoed back to us and said that when they get free time, that intrinsically motivate them to get their work done. And as a result of it, they're doing extremely well. They're just like, hey, we get free time if we put in the time and we get the grades that Mr. David wants, and we get the performance level. Yes, I'm gonna do this. And we get to have snacks, and we get to have candy. We get to, and go outside and play. Like, those are all motivating factors, but those are everything outside of that learner. And then the second most significant one is intrinsic motivation. This actually comes from within. This is the driving force. This is what wakes us up to, become an educator every single day. Like, I am intrinsically motivated to bring just an exceptional amount of value to people. All right. I run a podcast. I write for the newspaper in our city. I speak on different stages. Like, my goal is to bring value to people. And the reason why I'm intrinsically motivated, because I know how much value people have brought into my life. So I'm motivated by bringing value to people, making people's lives better, because there's so many people who've made my life better. And our goal as educators, as parents, as leaders, is to move our learners from extrinsic motivation to intrinsic motivation. So moving them from external things to internal things that motivate them. And it's our goal. It's our job to help them become self-starters. And we want them to do things not because they're externally motivated, but because they're internally motivated. But we have to understand that it's a process. I speak to parents all the time, and one of the biggest frustrations is like, I just want my child to be motivated from within, right? No one, unless they're intrinsically designed like that, if that doesn't motivate them, then we have to find ways to externally motivate them until they can start getting that internal motivation. And for example, one of my students, he's not motivated by school, and I have an understanding of that. The parent have an understanding of that. We all have an understanding of that. But he's externally motivated by playing video games. So during free time or during the end of the day, we have an opportunity to play video games. And my challenge to him is, hey, you need an 80 or above on your assignments, and then we can have that conversation. And when he comes back to me, he's like, David, I did it, right? He gets 100, right? So as a result of that, he's starting to feel better about himself. And then I'm affirming that what he's doing is correct. So he's receiving approval. Is receiving acceptance. He's receiving encouragement. And as a result of it, it's starting to motivate him internally. So sometimes we have to play the role of externally motivating our learners so that they can become internally motivated. So the second phase, or the second level of motivation, is good training. We motivate people by correctly structuring their experience. Like, we create the experience that they have. And training involves four major stages. The first stage is the telling stage. This is when we're just talking at them. This is when we're vomiting information. This is where we're having a one-sided conversation. And if you have experienced a one-sided conversation, you know how life-giving that is. I'm being sarcastic. No, it sucks. But when it's going back and forth, when there's a volley, it becomes life-giving. You feel included. You feel engaged. You feel like you're a part of it. So the first stage in training is a telling. This is where we have the sage from the stage, the lecture. This is when we're telling the students, here's what we need to do. The second stage is the showing stage. This is where we provide the model. This is when we're leading by example. This is what we're accepting, and we're living out what we're preaching. And for example, right? One of the things we do in our school, when someone has a grievance, they have to come to the table. So as a result of it, I've had a grievance with my youngest son. So I went to the table, and the kids are watching, and I'm doing what I've echoed to them. It's like, hey, here's something I've noticed. Here's what we can get better. And then my son and I, we reconciled. We hugged it out. And as a result of it, he got better. So we have the table. I call it the table of grievance when someone has a grievance, but it's really this table of restoration, right? We talk about what offended us, and then we strive to make actions, and so we won't do it again. So stage number 3 and 4 involves doing, but in different ways. It's in a controlled situation, then it's in an uncontrolled, and it's real life. So a controlled situation, would be, for example, like when I was playing football in practice, we would have a 2-minute drill. This is when, there's 2 minutes left in the game, and then we'll do a simulated control scenario where we're down and we got to score some points, and we have to, don't turn over the ball. So that's a control situation. That's an environment that we controlled and that we created. Then it's an uncontrolled, right? So now we're doing scrimmages against other teams. We're not playing in the full game yet, but we're doing a scrimmage against other teams. And then the real life situation, that's when we're in the game where it's 2 minutes down, the crowd is cheering and we need to figure this out. That's the same thing we do for our learners. We create a controlled environment for them where they can make mistakes. Mistakes are not final. Then we create an uncontrolled environment where we allow them to, stretch a little bit more, get in their growth zone. And then it's real life situation. Now they're taking their tests. Now they're doing life. So those are the 4 stages in good training. Now that we have an understanding that the 2 levels of motivation and how it addresses the awareness of the learner's needs and the importance of good training, let's dive into the psychology of motivation, right? Have you ever wondered why there's like certain people who can bring out the best in others, right? They seem to have just a little extra effort from the people that they lead. They seem to possess this knack, this ability for inspiring people. And this remarkable skill is the art of motivation that makes them highly successful in everything they do. On the other hand, right, have you ever experienced someone who brings the worst out of people, right? When we're around this person, we feel incompetent, we feel suffocated, we feel discouraged, we feel negative, we feel heavy, we feel even more toxic, right? Now, there's a difference between motivation and manipulation. Manipulation is secretive about its intentions, right? It's very secret. Like, I'm not going to tell you what I really want, but I'm just going to hide it and I'm going to act like, I'm just going to be shady, right? It's that shady type stuff. And then there's motivation. It's very transparent about intentions. Like, hey, this is why I'm motivating you. Here's the end goal. This is what I'm going to ask. This is what I need from you. Now, when someone is a manipulator, right, they are trying to gain something from you without telling you. And when someone's a motivator, they're looking for opportunities to create value-based relationships so that both people win. Now, there's 3 ways to practice the psychology of motivation. Number 1, expect the best from the people you lead, right? We expect the best from the people we lead. When we do that, when we practice that, as a result of it, now our expectation, we start to treat them as such, right? We treat them that as if they're the best thing that blessed this earth. But when we don't expect the best from them, as a result of that, we don't have very high standards for them. And when they're falling short, you're like, well, I didn't have very high standards for you anyways. But when we expect the best, we receive the best. And that's something that we do in our school. That's something we do in our family. Like, I expect excellence, right? If you're going to be in the Prosper tribe, you're going to be excellent. And my wife could tell you that the first couple of years of marriage, she was frustrated because she was like, oh, why are you trying to change up everything? You're trying to, like pointing out my flaws, pointing out my areas of growth. I'm like, my last name is Prosper, and I expect that everyone grows. I expect excellence. And now as a result of it, she's come around to it and she's like, okay, I understand it a little bit better. It still's not easy, but I expect the best. And then when they do their best, we celebrate it. Number 2, believe in best intentions, right? If we believe that people have positive intentions towards us, as a result of when we hear their constructive feedback or criticism, we know that they have positive intent, that they love us, that they care about us. And I remember one of our students, he was having a challenge one day, and I was very authentic with him. I'm like, hey, what you're doing is unacceptable, and we need to change this. And he made the pivot. And in the past, when he was in another school,